I'm in Bodhgaya, up in the library, appropriately. It's a little warm up here. The fan, there's no fan in this particular corner that I've chosen. So there may be some sweat, but anyway, hopefully it will not affect the words of the Buddha and teachers who have come after the Buddha. Good to see some good former, I was going to say old, some friends, Divya and Dr. Saab from Devlali, Nasik, and Neil, and then some new friends as well. Yeah, Vishal rings a bell from some time. Lena, I'm not sure which Lena this is, but anyway, everybody welcome. So we'll continue with what we started on Tuesday, realizing that this could go on for a long time, meaning this series, because there's so much one could quote from. And it's never ending. There are so many volumes in the Kangyur and Tengyur of the Tibetan tradition. I have a library here. We have a library at Truth Institute with I don't know how many thousand books. So there's always wonderful quotations that one could draw from. So let's start with some motivation that would be appropriate. And today we'll use something from Bhikkhu Bodhi's introduction in the wonderful book that I also alluded to last time on Tuesday, in the Buddha's Words, the Anthology of Discourses from the Pali Canon. So there, in his introduction to the an early section called the human condition, he speaks about how there are basically, one could look at two types of followers, two types of beings, maybe not even followers, just two levels, two groupings of human beings. One, and he's using Pali terminology, because this anthology is teachings from the Pali Canon, the earliest recorded teachings of Lord Buddha, which perhaps began around 2nd, 1st century BC, like that. Yeah. Nothing was written down earlier than that, it is said. So he talks about uninstructed people, uninstructed worldlings, you could say people whose minds haven't been trained at all in the teachings. And I don't know Pali, so I would make a mess of trying to read the Pali, but I'll do so anyway. Asutava Puttujana. Asutava Puttujana, uninstructed worldling. Okay, so there are uninstructed worldlings for whom, of course, the human situation is one of constant suffering, all kinds of suffering, and not understanding it, being in that frustrating situation of not really knowing the cause of one's disease, of one's suffering, and not being able to deal with it. So there's that person. And the other category of beings is what Bhikkhu Bodhi refers to as the instructed noble disciple. So those of us, those beings who have received some instructions, have received some teachings. So those are Sutava Arya Shavaka. Sutava Arya Shavaka. So you see, for the first category, the uninstructed worldlings, everything is a problem, and that is made worse by the fact that we're really confused about the whole situation. We don't know why we are suffering. We don't know the cause of it. It's like having a terrible disease and really not knowing what the cause is. And one hasn't yet plucked up the courage, or one is not close enough or whatever to a doctor who can tell us, who is good enough, deep enough to tell us what the problem is. So in this section of the text, Bhikkhu Bodhi quotes from the Samyukta Nikaya, one of the categories of the early teachings. And this is a section he calls anxiety. Anxiety due to change. Anxiety due to change. So since these are reputed to be the words of the Buddha, one should listen carefully, even though it's English translation. So, anxiety due to change. And it seems like we've already done our motivation, right? We've motivated that we do not remain in the state of uninstructed worldlings, but become instructed noble disciples of Lord Buddha, so that we can understand and put into practice as much as we can the teachings, which the Buddha said were simply intended to free us from suffering and to liberate us, to finally liberate us. So we should motivate that this becomes more and more reality for us, taking the teachings to heart and practicing them, so that we not only train our minds to become good, steadfast, ethical disciples of the teachings, but also then can expand our vision, if you like, expand our hearts to be able to help other people, to benefit others. And good Lord, Lord knows nowadays it seems beings and the whole planet need more help than ever from us, instructed people, people who care, right? So it's very powerful to think like this, I feel. It's not a luxury to somehow open one's heart and generate compassion. It is, it's like having person dying of thirst as well. They have to be given food and water. So it's like the world needs so much help right now. And although we can't be out there stopping whatever it is, the famine, the bombings, the whatever, we can make a start in our own mind, which is where the problem always begins. Okay, so this is our noble motivation, as befits instructed noble disciples, who have gone beyond being totally uninstructed, confused people, roaming around, not knowing what is happening, right? Okay, this text, and it's a few paragraphs long. I won't read the whole section, perhaps, although if you listen carefully and you don't have too many distracting thoughts, and you aren't in a hurry to go out to see a movie, or you don't have a meal or coffee on the gas, then you might. Or if you're not fighting, yes. Okay, so how do we do this? One of the hosts can have less of the background, which is, of course, very interesting, but not necessary. Has somebody done that? One of our... Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so anxiety due to change. I hope you're all sitting comfortably. Monks, and I know you're not all monks, but this is the Buddha would have been surrounded by monks, and he may well have given this teaching, for example, at the bamboo grove in Rajgir, present-day Rajgir, or it may have been given at Shravasti. It doesn't say in this extract exactly where the Buddha is, but it could have been one of these places where the Buddha gave so many teachings. Monks, I will teach you agitation through clinging and non-agitation through non-clinging. Listen and attend carefully. I shall speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. I guess the monks had to reply, yeah, so the Buddha realized they weren't goofing off or sleeping, yeah? Yes, Venerable Sir. The Blessed One said this. And how, monks, is there agitation through clinging? Here, monks, the uninstructed worldling, who is not a seer of the noble ones, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, who is not a seer of superior persons, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, regards the form as self, or self as possessing form as in self, or self as in form. That form of his changes and alters. With the change and the alteration of form, his consciousness becomes preoccupied with the change of form. Agitation and a constellation of mental states born of preoccupation with the change of form remain obsessing his mind. Because his mind is obsessed, he is frightened, distressed, anxious, and through clinging, he becomes agitated. He regards feelings as the self. He regards perception as self, as me, volitional formations as self, consciousness as self, or self as possessing consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That consciousness of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of consciousness, his consciousness becomes preoccupied with the change of consciousness. And agitation and a constellation of mental states born of preoccupation with the change of consciousness remain, obsessing his mind. Because his mind is obsessed, he is frightened, distressed, and anxious, and through clinging, he becomes agitated. It is in such a way, monks, that there is agitation through clinging. How, monks, is there non-agitation through non-clinging? Here, monks, the instructed noble disciple, who is a seer of the noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dharma, who is a seer of superior persons and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, does not regard form as the self, or the self as possessing form, or form as in the self, or self as in form. That form of his changes and alters. Despite the change and alteration of form, his consciousness does not become preoccupied with the change of form. No agitation and constellation of mental states born of preoccupation with the change of form remain obsessing his mind. And because his mind is not obsessed, he's not frightened or distressed or anxious. And through non-clinging, he does not become agitated. So, seems to be very clearly, although in an old-fashioned, of course, in a language that we do not speak in nowadays, the Buddha is clearly saying, is he not, that when we identify ourselves with form, with feelings, with perceptions, any mental states, whether virtuous or non-virtuous, and with consciousness, any of the forms of consciousness, the levels of consciousness, when we cling to them and we become obsessed with that, and that leads to all manner of agitation, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, leads to a crowding of the mind, which again I've spoken about before, but which requires quite a lot of speaking about another day. How we basically crowd our mind with conceptions, with images, with thoughts, and so the basic spaciousness of the mind, the basic peace and spaciousness of the mind gets compromised. And we suffer, like we do in a place that is overcrowded, right? Especially people who I found lived in the West, especially, not necessarily the West, but people who are used to living in countries with, not so many people, where they have their own bedrooms. It's not 6 or 10 people to a room, When you have that kind of situation, you have your own bathroom, you're used to space, right? You feel kind of comfortable. It's not perfect, but you feel quite comfortable. And then when you have to, even the thought of going to a Dharma center, having to share your room with somebody, it's like, wow, sharing with someone becomes a problem, let alone, lots of people in a dormitory or, you name it. So the point is, the spacious mind, the calm, spacious, tranquil mind, is something which is the basic nature of our mind, this spacious awareness. But of course, we're not used to it, and our mind is very, very crowded, and we're somehow we are used to that situation. We get used to it. So in fact, for us, solitude, silence, not being around a lot of people can be quite threatening, can't it? Anyway, the more we become instructed, noble disciples and move away from the state of uninstructed worldlings, we will, I suppose, more and more appreciate the spaciousness of the mind. Yeah. Okay. Now, another way of approaching. Let's look at another way of approaching this, or another not totally, but a very different style of looking at this situation. And it comes from a modern teacher who has influenced me very much, whom I keep on quoting, Jürgen Trungpa. Listen to what he has to say about this anxiety. Yeah, this quote we just had was around anxiety, wasn't it? Anxiety due to change. Okay. Seems to be some wind, which is opening and closing the door of the library. Okay, so here, Trungpa is talking about recognizing the reality of suffering. And this is something I love mentioning whenever I attempt to share any kind of, Dharma, which is that the Buddha is so honest. He doesn't spare us. He's not trying to whitewash the situation. We're suffering, he says we're suffering. We're sick. He says we're sick. He says you're very sick. He doesn't mince his words. He calls, as we say in English, he calls a spade a spade. He gives us reality as it is. So here, with the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha is telling us how it is, and that any potential openness, spaciousness, or bliss there may be, but it's not our general experience right now. what we experience right now is a more cramped, kind of busy, crowded state of mind, anxious state of mind. Yeah. Okay. So let's read something from Trungpa's chapter on recognizing the reality of suffering from an extraordinary compilation of his teachings on the path of individual liberation, the basic Theravada and Mahayana teachings. A larger section on the Four Noble Truths. Okay. The main point of the first noble truth is to realize that you do have such anxiousness in your being. You might be a great scholar and know the Buddhist path from top to bottom, including all the terminology, but you yourself are still suffering. You still experience a basic anxiety. Look into that. At this point, we're not talking about an antidote or how to overcome that anxiety. First thing is just to see that you are anxious. You really have to understand samsara. You are in samsara and you actually have to realize that. So before you have been taught about samsara, the uninstructed worldling stage, before you've been taught about samsara, you have no idea where you are. You're so absorbed in it, there's no reference point. Now that we're providing a reference point, look at what you're doing. Look at where you are, what you're in the midst of. That is a very important message. It's the beginning of the best enlightened message that could ever come about. At the level of the higher teachings, the Vajrayana, we might talk about non-duality of samsara, nirvana, fundamental wakefulness, or flash of instantaneous liberation. But whatever we might talk about is concentrated in this very, very ordinary message. You have to review where you are. It might be a somewhat depressing prospect to realize that you are so thoroughly soaked in this greasy, heavy, dark, and unpleasant thing called samsara. But that realization is tremendously helpful. That understanding alone is the source of realizing what we call Buddha in the palm of your hand. The basic wakefulness that's already in your possession. So such higher possibilities begin right at this point, right here, in realizing your samsaric anxiousness. Understanding that anxiety, which is very frustrating, not so good, is the key to realizing where you are. The only way to work with this anxiety is by means of the sitting practice of meditation. He doesn't say it's one way, he says it's the only way. It's by taming your mind or the shamatha practice. This is the basic idea of individual liberation, taming yourself. The way to tame yourself or to talk yourself out of this particular anxiety is through the concentrated practice of shamatha discipline. The beginning of the path of the Buddhadharma is about how you can actually save yourself from samsaric neurosis. You have to be very careful. You're not yet up to saving others. Yeah. So, sitting practice of meditation. Trungpa didn't allow his students, we're talking here back in the early 70s, and his students, you have to understand, came out of one of the most interesting and on the one hand, free and liberated so-called decades of the 20th century, the 60s, and they had to be tamed. They were not easy to tame. They were fascinated, many of them, with the colors and the exotic nature of what they could see in Tibetan Buddhism, for example. Sure. A lot of them were still taking mind-enhancing drugs, you know. So Trungpa was someone who reminded them that the basic practice was not to try and get high, you know, in that sense, or to have peak experiences all the time, whether through drugs or meditation, but to come back to reality, to where we are right now, which is our basic sense of uncomfortableness, unsatisfactoriness, our edginess, our restlessness, our roughness of mind, yeah, our anxiety, yeah, which had to be tamed through meditation, sitting practice. He didn't allow people to take higher teachings, his Vajrayana teachings, unless they had done a certain specific number of hours of sitting practice, shamatha practice, basic awareness practice. Yeah. So that's, yeah, very, very good advice, I think. Very, yeah, strong advice, good advice. And there's a story of how in one of the seminars that he was leading, there were a lot of people there. It was early days. They didn't have big Dharma centers where they could house everybody in nice rooms, like Root Institute, by the way, where we are having new rooms built. They were in tents, yeah. So in the middle of the night, one night, Trungpa Rinpoche came into one of the tents where all the students were sleeping. He woke them all up. He woke up all the students and gave them a lecture on the basic Hinayana discipline, the basic practice, about how important it was, and not to get caught up and, you know, all, you know, spaced out with the higher teachings, but to get to grips with what we're experiencing right now and to work with it through sitting practice. So that's what he did. He woke people up in the middle of the night. So I guess when that happens to you, you don't easily forget that kind of teaching that Trungpa gave his students. Yeah. Okay. So that's all very well, of course. Wonderful, wonderful. Now, well, let's move away a little bit from, and don't worry, we'll have plenty of time today for discussion. I'm not going to quote from much more, maybe 3, 4 more quotes, much shorter ones. Yeah. So what gives us, you could say, and again, we're using the English language, we're using language which is, you know, so limited, and, you know, not being a Shakespeare or, you know, Kalidas or anything, one is not able to use language in the optimum way. But let us just say that, you know, we do have the potential. What gives us the right? What gives us the authority? What makes us so big-headed, if you like, that we think we can go out there and help other people? You know? What makes us think that? What is there in the teachings that say we could do that? You know, we can't even help ourselves. It's like, you know, it's like we can't even change our own nappies, and we go, you know, want to go out and help the world, something like that. You know. So, what enables us to do that? What enables us to do that, of course, and you all know the answer, I'm sure, is the fact that this overcrowded, somewhat occasionally cesspit-like mind is actually pure by nature. And there's a nice quote from Dingo Chense Rinpoche here, who was the teacher, one of the teachers of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and many, many other teachers. including Trungpa Rinpoche, Zongsa Rinpoche, a whole galaxy of teachers were students of this great Lama Dingo Chensa Rinpoche, who, whom you must have heard of, or please, if you ever get a chance to see the movie on his life called Brilliant Moon, or to read his biography, it's very amazing. He simply said this one time: on the absolute level, the teacher, the guru, is oneness with the very nature of our own mind, which is itself the essence of Buddhahood, the Tathagat Garbha. Okay? Through the outer or relative teacher and his pith instructions, his quintessential instructions, we can bring ourselves to the realization of the inner or absolute teacher, which is awareness itself. Of course, great teacher could give extraordinary commentary on this one short para. All one could say here is that what gives us, you see, this authority, what gives us the confidence to say, yeah, I'm going to liberate all sentient beings. I'm going to practice the 6 perfections. I'm going to become a Buddha, to benefit others. And right now I, make even the most stupid of errors, speaking to people or, not minding my body, speech, and mind. So what gives us that courage is the fact that we do have this awareness. We have the awareness. We do have the Buddha nature, the Tathagat Garbha, which we can become more and more acquainted with, simply because it is the basic nature of our mind. Yeah. If you could just excuse me one moment while I do close this recalcitrant door. So I hope you had some time to think about that. I mean, Buddha nature, the whole text, the whole teaching, whole treatises on that by, for example, Lord Maitreya, as imparted to Asanga, the sublime continuum, Uttara Tantra, right? I mean, I haven't studied that text in depth, but my point is one could go into this very, very, very deeply. But in simple language, it's like we all have the seed of enlightenment, the seed to wake up completely. We have the awareness right now. Right now, we have that awareness. It's just we are a little bit confused by past and future time and the thinking process that has really confused us and allowed us to forget our basic nature. Yeah. Okay. So now that we feel we could jump into this other sort of experience of opening up to others, let's say, theoretically, I can't speak for myself here, but let's say we had tamed our mind and begun to move quite strongly from uninstructed worldling to instructed noble disciples. Let's say we were, well set on that path. At least we had made a few confident steps in the right direction. Now, what might we be able to do? We have read the teachings. Many of us are familiar with the great Lamrim teachings and so forth. And we have received those teachings and we know what is a bodhisattva, what a bodhisattva does, and so on and so forth. Let's look at that from a non-traditional perspective, excuse me, but which I feel is very realistic. So we'll have two quotations on this, one from Trungpa and one from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Different styles, but if we were to reflect on them, maybe we come to a similar kind of understanding. I'll read the Trungpa first from his book Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior, which I've quoted many, many times before. He's speaking about a person who is really making some kind of good progress in meditation and is being quite brave about it, in the sense that is carrying on with it through difficulties, has made the leap of daring, as he puts it, when one sees sometimes that one just has to go into a particular experience of body or mind and not run away from it. So he calls a kind of a leap of daring, also to give up believing all your thoughts, to let go of hope and fear. That requires a kind of a leap out of our habitual patterns. So this is what he's calling a leap of daring. Now, once you've made a leap of daring, you might become arrogant and you might say to yourself, look, I've jumped, I'm so fantastic. But arrogant warriorship doesn't work. It does nothing to benefit others. So the discipline of renunciation also involves cultivating further and further gentleness, so that you remain very soft and open and allow tenderness to come into your heart. The warrior who's accomplished renunciation is completely naked and raw, even without skin or tissue. He's renounced putting on a new suit of armor or growing a thick skin. So her bone and marrow are exposed to the world. She's able to be quite fearlessly what she is. Okay, I'll stick with he, because that's what's in the original text. In this day and age, one somehow hesitates saying he all the time. Anyway. At this point, having completely renounced his own comfort and privacy, wow, that's a big one. Having completely renounced his own comfort and privacy, paradoxically, the warrior finds himself more alone. He's like an island sitting alone in the middle of a lake. You can visualize an island in the middle of a lake. Yeah. Those of you who know Horsecast, there's an island in the middle of the Horsecast Lake. Occasional ferry boats and commuters go back and forth between the shore and the island. Yeah, but all that activity only expresses the further loneliness or the aloneness of the island. Although the warrior's life is dedicated to helping others, he realizes that he'll never be able to completely share his experience with others. The fullness of his experience is his own, and he must live with his own truth. Yet, he is more and more in love with the world. So that combination of love affair and loneliness is what enables the warrior to constantly reach out to help others. By renouncing his private world, the warrior discovers a greater universe and a fuller and fuller broken heart. This is not something to feel bad about. It is a cause for rejoicing. It is entering the warrior's world. So, yeah, that broken-hearted quality. It could come in different ways to different people, couldn't it? There's some people who would be broken-hearted with seeing, you know, a very vulnerable child being exposed to poverty or being a refugee or to violence. For others, it could be something else, or their own pain, or the pain of close relations, or being with somebody when they're dying. That can bring out that broken-hearted quality. It's said for the bodhisattvas who have realized emptiness, for example, and who know how close, in a sense, how it's just because of this basic misunderstanding that beings suffer, and that in a sense their suffering is needless, it is pointless, it is remediable. Seeing that makes the bodhisattvas on the one hand very hopeful in one way, but also very sad that beings neglect what is good for them, if you like, and only engage in somehow what is bad for them, create more and more suffering. Anyway, I like that analogy of the love affair and loneliness, because actually that is what life seems to be about. And those who don't appreciate that, maybe it leads to some kind of unhealthiness in our relationship with the world, our relationship with others. If we cannot see the gap somehow, which is the solitude, but also the real, genuine love or metta, the maitri, the affection and tenderness for others. Yeah. Working with, so for some people, like me, actually, often working with younger people, working with school children can bring out that sense of care and affection, and also brokenheartedness, seeing how much children suffer. Yeah. And their home situations very often, which are very painful. Yeah. So also realizing the kind of world that children have to inherit. Yeah, that can be, yeah, a source of brokenheartedness to some degree. Anyway, let's look at what Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. And then, yeah, I forgot, there's also one more quote on this, compassion side, from the Vimalakirti Sutra, one of my favorites. But let's listen to Lama Zopa Rinpoche from his book, Door to Satisfaction, which came out quite a long time ago, which has a very concise, Rinpoche has written and spoken more eloquently than this on compassion and bodhicitta. Listening to his teachings on bodhicitta, especially way back in the early 80s, I remember, at Kopan Monastery. That was a kind of a revelation, especially when one contrasted it with the way he taught on death, suffering, hell realms. Yeah, that was pretty hellish listening to those teachings. When Rinpoche spoke on bodhicitta, it was extraordinary. One could see that he was speaking from that space, from that mind of bodhicitta, and it would really just transport one into a different kind of world. And I think many people felt this in his teachings. Okay, but here in this book, it's just a very clear, very practical teaching on why bodhicitta is somehow, how it works, and why it's so precious. The thought of bodhicitta is unbelievable. It makes everything other than working for sentient beings, boring and unsatisfying. There is no real interest or enjoyment in life apart from this. Anything else is meaningless, empty, essenceless. Real happiness and satisfaction start when you begin to live your life for others. You retreat for others, practice Dharma for others, study for others, work in the office for others, cook for others. When your attitude is transformed so that you do everything for others to pacify their suffering and obtain their happiness, there is real satisfaction and peace in your heart. Now, when you are cherishing yourself, thinking only of yourself, how can I be happy? How can I be free of problems? There is no happiness in your heart, only worry and fear. You see only problems, and your mind is not relaxed. But in the next moment, when you change your object of concern to another sentient being, even if it's only one other sentient being, suddenly your heart is released from self-cherishing, like limbs being released from chains. As soon as your object of concern changes from yourself to someone else, your heart is released from the bondage of the self-cherishing thought. As soon as you change the object of your cherishing, there is suddenly peace in the very depths of your heart. Right in the very moment that your mind changes from self-cherishing to cherishing others, there is liberation, freedom from the tight bondage of the selfish mind. So that speaks for itself. I don't think that requires any commentary. Of course, the habit of just thinking about oneself is so strong that often it's difficult to change the object. But if one were to do so, then, yeah. Okay, so what does the, excuse me, Vimla Kirti Nirdesh Sutra say? And again, this has been quoted before, so those who know it can take a break, but it's, I think, worth listening to again and again. This sutra, of course, has tremendous amount on the wisdom side, and this very chapter, which of course is I'm quoting from, also has a lot of material which one would say is more concerned with the wisdom aspect of the path. Just to give some people a background, very short, Vimalakirti is this great bodhisattva. He's a lesson. He lives at home. He involves himself with business, with schools, even goes to gambling houses and brothels to talk to people and turn their minds towards the Dharma. He sometimes just appears at street corners in order just to be with people and to, affect them with his amazing presence. He's honored by everyone. People really appreciate him. He's very honest in all of his dealings. Very extraordinary individual. He's actually a bodhisattva. Now, in order to ripen beings, in order to help them, bodhisattvas use many, many means, many skillful means, right? Upaya. And here he does something which one might call a little devious, a little tricky. He pretends to be sick. He pretends to be sick, and knowing that once he lies down and pretends to be sick, a lot of people are going to come and that will be an occasion for him to give them a teaching. Whoa, no, the window is playing up. Okay, there is wind. It could be rain. That will be nice. Okay, so he knows all these people are going to come and visit him. And they do. The small people to the merchants, to the school children, to the even the leaders, they come to visit Vimalakirti, and he gives them a teaching on how to aspire to the body of a Buddha and not to be content with this ordinary human body, which is like just a pit of iniquity and dirt and filth and foam and lacking essence and destined to die and not repay the kindness we've given it during its life. It kind of in the end it betrays us. So anyway, he gives that teaching. Now the Buddha, this is at the time of Lord Buddha, the Buddha knows what's going on, and he asks, he's surrounded by his monks and his Bodhisattva disciples, and one by one he asks them to go and visit Vimalakirti on his sick bed, suppose, and to tell him that, the Buddha is thinking of him and to ask about how he is and so forth. Nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go to visit Vimalakirti. And they all say, well, last time, they all have a story. Oh, last time I went to see him, he made mincemeat of my logic, he made me look a fool when he asked me a Dharma question or something like that. They all had something to say about Vimalakirti's extraordinary wisdom and ability to see through their lack of ultimate realization or whatever. Nobody wanted to go to see Vimalakirti on the Buddha's behalf. Finally, Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, Bodhisattva of wisdom, let's say, he agrees to go. So he turns up at Vimalakirti's residence somewhere in modern-day Vaishali, which is a pilgrimage place, and also historically the site of one of the very first republics that existed in India, at least. We're talking 4th, 5th century BC now. Anyway, so Manjushri turns up at Vimalakirti's door, right? And he says, and they start having this conversation, which I won't quote because it's like you'll think they're talking nonsense, that they've taken some drug and they're talking in a very strange fashion, which is a kind of code, of course. They're talking, wisdom language, like you find in the Heart Sutra. So anyway, after that, Manjushri says, oh, now let's put all this aside. Venerable Upasaka, meaning a venerable layperson, is your illness bearable? Will it get worse by wrong treatment? The world-honored one, the Buddha, has sent me to inquire after your health and is anxious to have good news of you. Venerable Upasaka, where does your illness come from? Where does your illness come from? How long has it been there? And how will it come to an end? Okay, so the great Manjushri asks Bodhisattva Vimalakirti these 3 questions. Where does your illness come from? How long has it been there? And how will it come to an end? So Vimalakirti replied, ignorance leads to attachment, which is the origin of my illness. Because all living beings are subject to illness, I am ill as well. When all living beings are no longer ill, my illness will come to an end. Why? A bodhisattva, because of his vow to save living beings, enters the realm of birth and death, which is subject to illness. If all the beings were to be cured, then the Bodhisattva will no longer be ill. For example, when the only child of a merchant falls ill, then so do his parents. And when the child recovers his health, so do they. Likewise, a bodhisattva loves all living beings as if they were his own children. So when they fall ill, the bodhisattva is also ill. And when they recover, he is no longer ill. Manjushri then asked, what is the cause of a bodhisattva's illness? Vimalakirti replied, a bodhisattva's illness comes from his great compassion. This is a very wonderful sutra. And for those who are more inclined to the wisdom side, it has a wealth of material on that. Because Vimalakirti is truly a very great master of wisdom. Okay, the electricity is gone here. So I will move to the portable hotspot on my smartphone, which I hope will pick up a local signal. Can you still hear me for now?
Yes,
yeah?
Kabir Ji, still here.
Okay, well, last, so I'm going to switch to my mobile. Hold on. It's raining outside. Okay. Long live portable hotspot. Can you hear the rain, I wonder?
No, Kabir Ji, there is a noise cancelling on your computer, so we cannot hear even the windows and the doors banging. We cannot hear that.
Beautiful sound. Makes me want to go to sleep. However, portable hotspot. What's going on here? Usually the port. There we are. Okay, just a sec. Excuse me, it won't take long now. Yep. Can you still hear me?
Yes, Kabir Ji, we can still hear you.
Wow. Okay. So hopefully, yeah. So, where were we? Yeah, this text, Vimalakirti Nirdesh, is really something. Highly recommended. You do need a face to look at. There's the Oscuro effect for those who. I think that was pretty much it. There was a reading from Krishnamurti from his journal, but maybe we can leave that for now. But the reason I was going to read that is because sometimes a description of nature And the way Krishnamurti weaves his descriptions of nature together with his observations regarding human ordinary consciousness is very powerful for me, and helps to highlight our addiction with somehow, how can I put it without sounding too old-fashioned? Or anyway, we become obsessed, haven't we? We become obsessed with our little toys, which of course are incredibly handy and clever and useful as well. But it's kind of alienated us, many of us, from just basic appreciation and attention and involvement, proper involvement with nature, with the natural world. To the extent, of course, that we pretty much destroyed it. There's no return now, really. We've passed many of the tipping points, and we can only hope for perhaps a slower deterioration of the situation. There's no magic formula now that's going to save us. So it seems that appreciation still for what is left is very important. And one of the great joys of being here in Bodhgaya this year, I hadn't been here through a full monsoon for a long time, or pretty much through the whole monsoon. And there's been good rain, and it's raining now. And what that means is there's a tremendous amount of greenery everywhere. Everywhere there's greenery. There's the green rice paddies, there's the greenery on the path, there's the bushes which are overgrowing, there's grass everywhere, Somehow it's all very beautiful, especially when coming from, coming from Delhi. Although where I live in Delhi is very blessed with greenery. But in general, coming from an urban space to Bodhgaya, where we are, the Food Institute is very rejuvenating somehow. Yeah. The nature is very important. Nature, space, spaciousness, that can help us. Anyway, now I'm drifting. Let's have some conversation. I see, hold on, I'll check what's on the chat. Is there any person in current time who has attained the Bodhisattva? Yes, I do believe so. You can meet, try and meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama. There are various teachers who one could say they are bodhisattvas. So, yeah, it's not easy to meet the Dalai Lama, of course, but you can sign up for you can walk past, and I think usually he will maybe bless you or hold your hand or something like that. Personal interviews are harder and harder now because he's so old, and so many people want to meet him. But I do believe there are other bodhisattvas, and of course, we don't know who's a bodhisattva. So there could be many around whom we don't know. And according to the teachings, your pet dog could be a bodhisattva, but you wouldn't know. However, sticking to humans, yes, there are. I could have made a lot of money working for the BBC. Yeah, that's the point. I should have tried that one. Someone is saying that. But he chose not to. I didn't even think of it. Yeah, didn't even think of it. But yeah, next life, if I'm born in England, and there's still a BBC, I'll think about it. Yeah, actually, I think they're paid more at Al Jazeera, which is why a lot of I found British BBC commentators I saw at Al Jazeera. I think, what are they doing there? They must, I think Qatar is richer than Britain, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, they pay them more. Well, thank you. What else do we have? Yeah. All right. Let's have some other questions or comments or your own favorite quote from the teachings. You can read it. You know. I wouldn't say Buddha did not like money. He didn't use money because they didn't touch money. Was there money in those days? Yeah, I suppose there was. Yes, there was money. Yeah, I don't know about not liking money. That might be a bit much. Andy, anybody? Some of our older students who needn't be shy. Namdita ji?
Pranam Kabir Ji.
Pranam. Pranam. That is not a question. Yes, but yeah, hello. Dr. Sudhi, anything come to mind? You traveled in the Buddhist world. You've been to Sri Lanka. The wife is from Sri Lanka. Do you have any favorite things to share? No? Okay.
प्रणाम कबीर जी.
Pranam.
Sir, myself Vishwajit Warik. I'm from Sambalpur, Odisha. मेरा एक सवाल है कि जैसे कोई बोधिसत्व प्राप्त कर लेता है तो सर्व मतलब उसको सारा ज्ञान हो जाता है, ठीक है. he can see the future and past as well, beyond the time. तो कोई ऐसे महात्मा है अभी आज के डेट में जो पास्ट और फ्यूचर को देख सकते हैं और
हाँ बिल्कुल. हाँ बहुत है, बहुत है, बहुत
ओके.
है.
क्या उनके साथ हम मतलब मीट कर सकते हैं? ऐसे कोई संत आप रेफर
हाँ
कर
लेकिन
सकते हैं सर?
वहाँ अगर वो सबको बताएंगे ना कि ये कर सकता हूँ तो लाइन लग जाएगा वहाँ. और यहाँ
ओके.
लाइन लगने को झगड़ा भी होने लगेगा. तो हम वो लोग अपना
ओके.
अपना वो जो है ना अपना सिद्ध को प्रचार नहीं करते हैं.
राइट
वो
राइट.
छुपा.
आई नो दैट.
हाँ, तो लेकिन
तो
मेन थिंग इज ना बुद्धिस्ट कहेगा कि अब जो हो रहा है उसको देखिए ना. पास्ट और फ्यूचर को अभी ज्यादा मत देखिए. अभी जो हो रहा है उसको देखिए. पास्ट तो हो चुका है.
राइट.
अब फ्यूचर को अगर अच्छी तरह से उस पर प्रभाव आप डालना चाहते हैं तो अभी जो है अभी सोचिए बुद्ध के धम्म पे और थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस कीजिए जैसे बुद्ध ने बताया. वो सबसे अच्छा है. अब पास्ट एंड फ्यूचर के बारे में जानना, टीचर्स असली टीचर्स इन बातों को जवाब नहीं देते हैं. मैंने कभी नहीं पूछा किसी अपने टीचर से कि पहले मैं क्या था, आगे क्या होने वाला हूँ. वो तो जवाब ही नहीं देते. हम्म. तो सब तो छोड़
थैंक.
दीजिए. आगे
और एक
पीछे
सवाल
का.
है सर. और एक
जी.
छोटा सा सवाल है. जब हम मेडिटेशन में बैठते हैं नॉर्मली क्या होता है, मेनी थिंग्स आर कमिंग टू माइंड, ठीक है. तो इससे कैसे मतलब खुद को थोड़ा सा बचाया जाए कि थिंकिंग्स आर कमिंग कंटिन्यूअसली टू माइंड, तो
हम्म.
इससे थोड़ा सा कैसे हटाया जाए, क्योंकि हम दिन भर
आपने
वी आर
कभी.
वर्किंग
हाँ.
प्रोफेशनल्स.
हाँ ये बहुत
हाँ
अच्छा
तो
सवाल.
हाँ
हम्म.
वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स हैं. देर आर लॉट ऑफ स्ट्रेस एंड एंजाइटी and workload and
Yes.
somehow there are some health challenges also. So there are a
Right.
lot of things in our life. How to
Right.
get rid out of it while meditating?
Have you ever been on a meditation course?
No,
Or gone?
I have not yet, sir.
Okay. So that you'll need to do. The basic practice is to is to calm the mind by being aware of the breathing process, natural breathing process, and watching the breath, watching the arising of thoughts, but just getting into the habit of observing and letting them go without reacting to them, and just coming back to the breathing again and again and again, coming back to the breath, meaning sensation of breath, not the idea or thought of breath. मतलब सांस ले रहे हैं और वो कुछ महसूस होता है ना सांस लेते समय, वो विचार आ गया, पहचान लिए लेकिन छोड़ दिया, उसके पीछे नहीं दौड़ेंगे, छोड़ेंगे और वापस अपने सांस पर आ जाएंगे। ये करना है। ये बहुत बेसिक, बहुत अच्छा प्रैक्टिस है और 5-10 मिनट के लिए ही करना चाहिए, ज्यादा नहीं, वरना थक जाइएगा। और धीरे धीरे फिर हो सकता है कि हम अपने विचार को उतना सीरियसली नहीं लेंगे। We'll just see thoughts as thinking and we can let go and come back to the breath again and again. And breathing in a normal, slow way or a just gentle way is very calming for the mind. So this can be done in the mornings before going to work, and even during work sometimes. If you have 2-3 minutes, you can just do that. You see, even if you are getting angry at work, if you were to take a few deep breaths and relax as you're breathing out, especially, and let go of the thoughts when they arise, and it doesn't matter how many times they arise, they will keep on coming, no problem. You observe, let go, come back to the breath. Then you might find that quite useful. Instead of the habit of just thinking about the the problem or the what your boss said or जो भी हुआ, उसको छोड़ के अपने सांस पर ध्यान दीजिए और ये भी किया जा सकता है. So you can experiment with that for 5 minutes in the morning, and you can build up to 10 minutes if you can. और फिर धीरे धीरे आप देख लेंगे. Then you begin to have the ability to a little bit let go and not follow the thoughts so much. Still they'll keep on coming, लेकिन आप उन विचारों का गुलाम नहीं बनेंगे. आप थोड़ा मालिक बन सकते हैं एक तरह से.
Thank you, sir.
Does that make sense?
Uh,
Yeah, that's very simple, basic.
Sir,
Maybe you should start there.
Sir, can I
Maybe we
one more
allow
question?
someone else. Maybe
Okay.
let's ask somebody else first. फिर आप बाद में पूछ लेना. If there's no other
Hello,
question.
Kabir Ji.
Anybody?
Hello, Kabir Ji.
Hello,
This is Vishal.
Vishal ji.
Hi. It
To
was
ask the
amazing.
question, maybe we should. Okay. One sec. I need to see your face. I don't like speaking to
Sure.
dark rectangles.
Sorry. I'm actually in a tourist bus just returning from McLeodganj today. And the last 2 days I went to the Tushita center at Dharamkot. That was the only thing on my agenda. And I had a But anyways, coming to my point, I have 2 questions, sir, from you. One is, I've heard a lot of people saying that you should watch your thoughts while meditating. And I have noticed that while I am able to watch my breath or watch my sensations, but watching my thoughts is not possible. And it's like, every time I realize that I'm thinking, I just come back to the present moment, and then, what's the point in, thinking about what I've just thought? I just come back to my breath. So that's what my question is. And I have one more question. Should I say it right now, or would you want to first answer my
question? Let me answer this one. So maybe watching thoughts is sometimes the wrong thing to say. Recognizing a thought, I would think, might be more clear. You recognize the thought, but then you let it go. It's not like you keep on watching it, like you're fascinated by it or you're watching a movie. You actually recognize, but then you let go to the breath. there may be, a higher practice of watching your thoughts without getting caught up in them or seeing the emptiness of the thought or something. But I think better to say recognize the thought and let it go. Because, in a sense, what's the point about thinking about thoughts? Unless we're talking of something else, which is analytical meditation, where we are using thinking, but in a very constructive and logical way to investigate a topic such as death or suffering or cause and effect, things like that. Then, of course, one needs some logical thinking. You can't just you can't meditate on death or on compassion just by watching your breath, obviously. Not really. You might get some insights, but it helps to have some analytical meditation there, which does involve thinking. Yeah, but that's another story. What's your second question?
So my second question, and I've written that in the chat as well. So I believe that human life is not easy to come by, and I really want to make something out of this particular life that I have been fortunate to get. So I want to actually become a monk sometime in the future once all my worldly responsibilities are taken care of.
I see. Yes.
I'm not even sure whether to go for the Mahayana Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism.
Yeah, you have to take some time, to study and reflect on these things. Don't make any.
But I'm not really sure, what to kind of pursue, because one decision take and then stick to it. And also in terms of, if I end up becoming a monk, what are the implications in terms of, how much do I have to have in terms of financial security, if at all? And how does...
That varies from person to person.
Considering.
That's a huge question, and it's not appropriate for this session because it will take too long. You have to study more, you have to talk to monks or people who have been monks like me, but not in this context. As for money, some people, even if they had 40 or 50 lakhs in the bank, they wouldn't feel very secure. And other people might not have much at all, and they can live from paycheck to paycheck, as they say, and feel quite content. So it really depends on the person. But one has to think about that as well, what you're going to do. So that needs a lot of thought and a lot of study prior to taking that decision. And you need to then also mix with and talk to people who are monastics, and that will be very helpful. So more than that, I can't say now. But I wish you luck with your investigation, and hope that you can come to a kind of decision that helps you to the end of your life. That would be very good. Nothing like it if you can be a monk without a lot of the worldly cares, and spend your time reflecting on the Dharma and maybe helping, teaching others. That would be very good. Very wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think Anuj ji had a question regarding wondering how we align ourselves to conflicts that abound in the world today. How does one, at an individual scale, address circumstances that seem beyond our immediate agency or immediate control, maybe? As I can only echo what it seems to be the most practical. Of course, there are activists. You can become an activist, certain kind of activist, can't one? And go and shout oneself hoarse on the streets and get, shouted at by the other side. That's one way, and sometimes that seems necessary to make protests like that. And sometimes there can be very dignified protests, obviously, which have in history had an effect. The teachings seem to be saying that it is because of the fractured nature of our own minds the divided nature of our own mind, with its roughness, with its delusions, that is the problem, because the outer world, so-called, is simply a reflection of our own diseased consciousness. You know, we wouldn't have such a world if we all had calm, peaceful, kind minds, obviously. So it always comes back to the individual person. I mean, I think we're given a very good lesson nowadays with the United Nations trying all manner of means. I mean, they're really quite impotent. What can they do? You know, the UN can make lots of high-sounding statements to Israel and other countries, and you know, everyone saying this should be so, that should be so, but you know, laws and international laws don't have much effect if one or two people, and it is in the case of Israel, really, one or two or three very powerful people were having a big say on, say, Israeli policy, just to take the example of Israel and the Middle East at the moment, and the same on the other side, maybe. And to see that if these people were to change their minds, of course, it would make a big difference. But for the ordinary person like you and me, all we can do is work with our own mind and make our own little circle of peace and happiness and kindness. I don't see what else we can do. That can grow. One person, 2, 10, 100. It grows and grows if we're sincere, don't you think? We affect other people. We affect children at school. Then hopefully they can also affect other people as they grow and become adults. They can affect other people. So that seems to be the only way. Petitions and diplomats walking out of people's speeches at the UN, it's not having much effect, you know. So we have to come back to the source of the problem, it seems to me, which is our own mind. And because I can't change your mind or other people's mind, what can I do? Attempt to change my own mind. It's all I can do, and hope that it has, due to my effort or sincerity or whatever, it has some effect on other people's mind. That's all we can do. Don't you think? What's your suggestion, Anushi?
I don't have one because I think it's a point of confusion. Because obviously, I mean, I suppose I exist in circles where you're often expected to assume a certain gesture or a certain stance, and I'm often confused about my own, whether this is performative or whether this is actually authentic, and also what is an actual contribution I can make beyond this gesture or beyond this stance. So I think I'm asking this question also from that position of really not knowing what can be a useful contribution.
That's also an honest approach. But it's like if a house is burning in front of you and there's people you know burning in that house and you can do absolutely nothing. The flames are such, they're all burning, they're dead, they're screaming, they're dead, whatever, they're dying. You can't do anything. So, you know, there's no water around to throw on it. So what can you do as a last resort? You just have to work with your own awareness, consciousness, and of course, if it's found out, for example, that house burned down because of wrong kind of materials being used or cheap materials or whatever, shoddy construction, then you can do something perhaps to make sure fewer houses are built like that, through pressing for change in legislation or whatever. But you know what I mean? Often there is nothing we can do except work with our own painful mind and generate positive sort of attitude, loving, positive attitude. You know, what else can we do? Yeah, I mean, I sit here and, because I have family members in the Middle East. What can I do? I can stay in touch with them. I can do my practice, my prayers. But as for having any immediate effect on that, or the ice that is falling off the ice shelves in Greenland or wherever, I can't do much about that right now as an individual. But yeah, I can at least inform people of what's happening, and again, allow people to enjoy and appreciate nature, and allow people to see the consequences of totally neglecting and abusing nature, for example. But yeah, that's your question is a fun, difficult one. How would someone else answer? Where are we have people here who actually could be very eloquent on these things. Problem is, we have some people here who are great writers, but they don't like talking much in public. You have to egg them on. Sujit Ji, you with the iconic statue there of a icon, are you there in person, or is that simply there?
Yeah, I think a
Sujit
bit
Ji,
of me
are you
is there. Yeah. Yeah, some form is there, I'm sure.
Bataiye, what's your thoughts on this?
Still
You're googly
thinking.
from
Still thinking about it.
Still thinking?
Yeah.
Are you walking somewhere?
No.
I think it's
I'm sitting in your room.
Sorry,
Your
can
room,
you,
Asan.
Oh, sure.
uh,
My
Yeah,
room. Okay. Sure.
can you hear me?
ठीक है. These are difficult. What about Shyam? Shyamji, what do you think about that? What can we do to save Ukraine, Russia, Lebanon, Iran, Israel, Gaza? What can we do? And then the other faceless, unbelievable, bottomless pit of suffering in the world, whether it's the suffering of war, the suffering of famine, the suffering of conflict, the suffering of polarization, which is leading to all kinds of violence, verbal violence, mental violence, physical violence. What can you and I do?
Not much at an
What
overt level.
Not much.
At an overt immediate level.
Huh.
All the same,
what would you do?
I keep my practice on, and I do my Tonglen practice. I send my my love and my good wishes to everyone everywhere. That is what I am taught. That is what I feel like doing.
Right. Is this the Vicky from Australia that we know? Or another Vicky?
No, Kabir Ji, this is Vicky from Florida.
Florida. Oh boy. You just had a hurricane hit you or something?
That was on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast.
Oh, lucky you. Okay. Right. But I bet you know some people on the West Coast, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's yes. Thank you, Shyamji. And yeah, anybody else?
Well, Kabir Ji.
Ji.
I wanted to read a paragraph which actually came to my mind after Biswajit was asking his questions.
Yeah. Right.
And this is from What Makes You Not a Buddhist, the book What Makes You Not a Buddhist by TJK. And
okay.
It's from the chapter called Nirvana is Beyond Concepts. Chapter 4. the last chapter.
Okay.
And because he was asking about bodhisattvas, so this particular paragraph, it says, we human beings tend to think of enlightened beings within our own context. It's easier to imagine a hypothetical enlightened being off in the hazy distance, rather than a present, living, breathing, enlightened being. Because in our mind, such a being must be spectacular, possessing superior traits and talents in addition to all the best human characteristics. Some of us may think that we can gain enlightenment by trying really hard. But with such an exalted image in our minds, trying hard probably means exerting ourselves and sacrificing all kinds of goodies for millions of lifetimes. These thoughts may arise when we bother to think about it, but most of the time we can't be bothered. It's too tiring. When we see how difficult it is to get rid of our mundane habits, enlightenment seems out of reach. If I can't even stop smoking, how can I think about stopping the habits of passion, anger, and denial? Many of us think that we must appoint someone like a savior or a guru to do the cleansing for us because we don't have confidence to do it alone. But all this pessimism isn't necessary if we have the right information about the truth of interdependence and a little bit of discipline to apply it. Yeah, that's.
Very good. Yeah, yeah. Wisdom of interdependence and a little bit of discipline. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, one really feels in this modern situation that the world leaders who seem to be making the most mistakes now are not, of course, in one way, they think they're very disciplined, but they're very undisciplined. They're not seeing, as far as I can see, the connection between what they're doing now and any kind of long-term effects. They seem to be looking so short-term. I mean, don't you think? They're not seeing the interconnectedness between what they're doing now, what effects that's going to have on, you know, their own country, which they say they are trying to save. That lack of joining the dots, the ability to join the dots, seems very, yeah, a big modern problem. Thank you. Haji, Arman Dhar, where are you?
Yes, hi. Hi, Kabir Ji. I'm good. Thank you for your talk. It was a great talk.
Not a talk, really, but
oh yeah,
mixture of quotes and
right.
the sharing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just had a question. I don't know if it relates to the topic, but can you hear me? Hello.
Very well. Yes.
My question is that if you know one understands the Buddha's teachings correctly, then shouldn't there be like an urgency to escape samsara?
Good question.
and if
Indeed.
that's the case, then shouldn't one live a monastic life?
Very good. I think you and was it Mr. Vishal who was on the bus from, yeah, have a lot in common. I think, yeah, what you say is right. I mean, the Buddha said, who would want to remain in a burning house? If the house is burning, you want to jump out of it. Why are you in this burning house of samsara? Absolutely. That's one way to look at it. So it's just never ending, you know, due to the power of karma and delusion. Right. There's always going to be problems in samsara. Not a single place in samsara that is safe from the effects of delusion and karma, which is suffering. So,
but in a way, is that running
one
away
could
from
want to be free.
the actual
The
problem?
question is, depends.
Like
A whole
running away
bunch
from
of Buddha's
worldly life.
teachings are aimed at, the Buddha left his wife and child. Some traditional people are very upset the Buddha did that. Left his wife and child, even though they were well looked after. But, getting married, then leaving your wife and son, wow. But he did that, and I guess he did it for a purpose. So then you have to figure out why he did that. And perhaps the Buddha's greatness is how he combined letting go of worldliness, but also benefiting others. That seems to be one of the keys, that you don't just fly off into outer space somewhere, but you do keep on having connection with this planet or whatever, with beings, but you're not affected. You're not affected by the negativity, because oneself has purified one's own mind, so there is nothing to pollute one's own mind. One's body would get old and die, but one can come back again and again, like the bodhisattvas do, to benefit others. So they are, as they say, in the world, but not of the worlds. They are here with us, helping us, but they're not consumed by anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, etc., etc., and especially not polluted by ignorance, sense of duality, I, me, mine. But yeah, I think the teachings for some and for most of us probably is a progression, or can be a progression. We have to start with the Theravada teachings. That's why Trungpa Rinpoche went into the tent and woke up his students in the middle of the night. But the basic teaching is suffering. You think this world is such great fun. It's not. It's suffering. And if you don't get your act together and be more disciplined and ethical and work on your minds, there's going to be just everlasting suffering. So don't you want to be free of this? Of course one does. But then later, when one is more stabilized on that and confident and knows exactly the causes of suffering and how to get rid of it, then perhaps there's more confidence. Then you feel, okay, I know how to row this boat. Perhaps I can invite some more people into the boat and help them as well. But before you can row the boat yourself, you kind of feel hesitant. You have to just help yourself first. And then later one can take on more and more people, maybe something like that. That's a good question. It's early on, people who meditate properly, I'm sure they have experiences where they just are so sick and tired of it all that they say, why am I not just, going away into the mountains or the jungle or wherever and leaving this stinking rat race, in this rotten society? For sure. But then later, it's like that love affair and loneliness. So one feels that loneliness and the need to relate with others. Because don't forget, this is the very important human need, is to relate with other people. So then one feels for other people, right? They're suffering so much. One can't just work for oneself. One has to somehow, something in us makes us want to help others, doesn't it? Don't you think? To be with others. And the more we practice that, get used to that, then the more maybe that becomes our second nature. Like in the quote from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, then one realizes that real happiness in life starts when we really start to benefit others and stop just thinking about me and my suffering, So that's the skill, I think, of Buddhism. There's so many different strands, and one has to investigate them all and put them together carefully in the way that suits oneself. Hopefully following the instructions of a teacher or something, if necessary. And if there's no teacher, then the Dalai Lama said himself that if you don't have a guru, then your guru should be your own mind, your own intelligence, and authentic literature. That's your guru. Yes, it's very good. Authentic literature and your own wisdom, your own mind, your own intelligence. That's your guru, actually. Which will be with you to the end. Very unlikely your guru will be there holding your hand when you're suffering or when you die, you know. Especially if your guru is much older than you. You'll die alone. So what are you going to rely on? Your own wisdom, your own mind, understanding. Yeah. So anyway, thank you. Good question. And I started waffling. Where are we? 8:11 on a Saturday night. So no Saturday night fever, you folks? Not all going to late night parties? Yeah. Shyamji, I know you're waiting to go to a party. I know Ajir Ji and Sujit Ji, they're going to their parties. Yeah, yeah. And of course, yeah, all of Nivita, I'm sure she's going to a party. Why not? Nothing wrong with parties. Except if the music's too loud, you can't hear each other's intelligent conversation. Chalo, well, maybe that's it. It's given you enough food for thought, which is the whole purpose of this, is to listen, reflect, and then, if one can, to meditate. That's what we are told. Listen, study, reflect, and meditate. And yeah, like that. Aha. Yes, yes. Enough of this very well-meaning psychophancy, Nivita ji. Yes, yes. Very kind. No party. In fact, if you all come to Bodhgaya, we'll have a proper party. I brought my boombox back from Delhi this visit. I just came back this morning with the boombox. Nilashi ji had reminded me. So there will be very outrageous parties here now every Saturday evening instead of Zoom session. Yeah, I'm joking. But sometimes a party is good. Nothing wrong with party. Well, intelligent party. Dharma party. Ajir ji, pranam. I hope you're well. You're a silent witness to our ramblings. And everyone else.
Yeah.
So, yes. I think we stopped there. I have to say thank you to all of you because I'm feeling much better than when I started 2 hours ago. I'm feeling much better. So maybe a mixture of your interest and appreciation and the Buddha's teachings. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's your your blessings, all of you. I know. So take care, and I don't know when I'll meet you all again because I'll be a bit busy. And yeah, thank you, Divya ji. And hope to see you again soon. And good luck to and all of the activities at Tushita. Wonderful things happening there. And I was there on Tuesday. The golf was looking wonderful and hadn't been affected, it seemed, by the latest rains. So that's very good. There's a proper gompa there, which doesn't show the effects of rain. Yeah. So thank you all for your comments and your attention. Take care and please dedicate for long lives of all of our teachers, for us never to be separated from the teachings and for the return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche amongst us to continue guiding us, especially his younger students who will be able to benefit a lot from his new incarnation. Yeah, so we pray for that. Of course, we must send our love and prayers for all the suffering people in the Middle East, in Ukraine and Russia, and in Africa, and everywhere where there is suffering, which is everywhere, by the way. Everywhere there is suffering, one kind or another. So may whatever we do in our life at least alleviate the suffering of a few people. Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kabir Ji. Thank you.
Thank you.